All right, let's get going here. I'm gonna be on camera today. Don't always love that, but here we are. This is gonna be sort of a quick, rather express stream. Instead of kind of working live, I'm gonna show off my work. So this is just call this a little bit of a dev update. Gonna click back into the window here, and I'm gonna kind of show off what's going on here. And probably I'm not gonna have great sync with my character, but for the lip sync. But you can still see, mostly in real time, the well, look at him. He's got arms. Look at these arms. So I've been messing around with Control Rig, and I thought it would be kind of cool to be able to show off this new thing. I've got I'm using a lot of new Unreal 5 tech, or at least new and improved Unreal 5 tech. So I'm excited about it, and I'll take you through it. You notice I got fingers working, and my movements are pretty smooth. Still having trouble with some of these IKs. We'll see here. Let me put my arms out wide here, and I'll do a calibration. And then maybe that'll help with the IKs a little bit now. All right, we'll see here. All right, so it is what it is. But let's talk about how it is what it is. All right, so I got a lot of stuff going on here. Previously, and if you are a developer, don't hate me. I'm a filmmaker in conversion. My organization system is poor. Still working on that. So basically, I have two parts of my animation graph here, which is my animation blueprint, which is running my character. So I've got two things going on here. I'm gonna kind of break down some of it. Some of it I've covered before. So basically, I have this set up to be able to this on begin play here. I have these roaming orbs that are controlled by my hands that are like invisible to the camera, that represent where my VR controllers are in real time and space. So I'm using the beginning of this setup to be able to grab all of that info and save each of those individual actors. So then I am able to transfer that data and move it along, and that's how we get to this stuff here. This is my live link face. This is all the stuff that's driving my face. All of this stuff was rotators that were sending rotation data to my head. I've lost that function for now, but it'll come back. It'll definitely come back. So after that, we've got basically just we're touching up every frame to make sure that we know where the location of the VR stuff is. So that's all this stuff, is just finding the VR kit location. And then lastly down here, we have some functionality, and I should comment on, I should make some comments for all this stuff. We have all this functionality which tracks my fingers, which gets the finger data off of my VR controllers. I have a valve index that can track the fingers internally based on some pressure pads or some heat sensors, I'm not exactly sure, and then can pass them off onto all of these float values. They get passed into Control Rig, and we'll get there. The Control Rig coming up soon. So this might look a little wonky if you've been following the channel and you saw the video where I decided to make my own calibrator before the calibrator was included in LiveLink Face. Then you'll know what this crazy stack is all about. This is for my calibrator that I was building that passes some more float data back into my face contributor. I don't want to waste time on that. So basically, after all of the face stuff and all of the curve modifications here, we have our control rig. So I have a bunch of data sources coming out of my control rig, and then just kind of passing those through to what we're going to be doing with control rig. And after that here, I actually do, we'll get to this, but I actually do still have a couple of modify bones that are happening here in Animation Blueprint. Like Control Rig is probably the better tool, but I haven't figured out how to do it as efficiently as I have with these nodes. We'll come back to that. This stuff is previous functionality. Obviously, I had some IKs going straight out of Animation Blueprint, but I'm not using those anymore. Everything we're doing is happening in Control Rig now, which is super exciting. This one has been intimidating me for a long time, and I'm happy to be able to finally show off what I've done. So if you watched the stream yesterday, you saw me code a bunch of this stuff. I put together sort of a rough FK rig here for my character in the middle, and this is all rough. This is today's work. This isn't necessarily a polished rig by any means. I'd like to polish up, and then maybe I'll post some maybe I'll post a tutorial or something about how this works. But basically, how do I even explain Control Rig? So you can see all the bones that my character has here. He's hunched right now, and I'm not really even sure why that is. And basically, the way this works is I have controls and I have bones, and the bones sit in one place and the controls sit in another place. And you kind of want them right on top of each other, because once they're synchronized, you can start using one to control the transformation of the other. So to be able to set up that transformation, to be able to get all the controls, to move all the bones, you have to wire them up with these nodes over here. So yesterday I put together this chain here. This is an FK chain, or forwards kinematics, and this is going to rotate all of my bones and make everything work nicely. And then underneath it here, I mean, we've got a sequence here the same as we have in other blueprints, so this is my first chain, I guess. Finish my thought first. So that makes all of these things connected, and they won't move now. Oh, they will. They will still move. I was going to say, they might not move because of some updated functionality that comes later. But I did this to be able to get a little bit more control over my character here. And he's doing somersaults in midair and launching his feet behind his own head. So that's pretty interesting. Yeah. So it's time to move on, I guess. Once I have that FK rig set up. The FK rig is also providing the seated position, like the some of these nodes, some of you can't see because I just didn't want a bunch of stuff clogging up the screen. Like there already is stuff clogging up the screen. I should full screen this, but I have some nodes in the legs too, which are providing this rotation on the legs to create the sitting pose. Sort of a quick and dirty way of doing it, I think. And yeah. So moving on, I have more. Oh, look, a comment. I got a comment this time. I made a comment. I have this entire crazy contraption over here. And this, if you'll remember, we were plugging a bunch of values into Control Rig. This is where we're getting all of our VR data. We're getting all of our rotation, and we're getting our value. This is really important. This stumped me. Once we get these values in, if they're from world, we need this from world node. Otherwise, I can't explain spaces perfectly, but Control Rig kind of like exists in this idyllic space of its own, kind of removed from the world of global transformation vector data. So I have the data coming in, it's going to world, and then it's going to these specific controls. So currently, let's see. I should also mention the reason that these that you can actually see the way the rig looks is I set up this little system here that basically will only run this connection if this value is true. And I have this set up in Control Rig to, I'm going to briefly explain this. I hope it makes sense. Don't want to spend too much time on it. Basically, I added a functionality. I flip a switch here. This Boolean turns on the ability to do this. So what this gives us is if it's not in the game, if we're not running the game, then we can still see what we're doing here, and we can move some of our controls around, which ends up being really helpful if you don't, if you're not quite done with your controls yet and you're not ready to just hand them straight over to your controllers and put them into the world space. So next in the chain, and sort of hiding off to the side here, My spatial reasoning isn't making a whole lot of sense here. This execution stack is really nice. I've seen the devs talk about how when they're collaborating, it's helpful to just sometimes look at somebody's stack and then understand what they're doing from that before you yell at somebody for putting stuff in weird places. But basically, I have an IK system here. So we talked about the FK system, that was forward kinematics. IKs are inverse kinematics. And an inverse kinematic system basically does math backwards to figure out how to place all of the bones behind a given point. So as you can see here, I'm moving my hand around, and I'm moving here. You can see a little bit of just a little bit of give here, a little bit of a gentle, damped movement. That's coming from these verlays that are managing our input. Once the control gets moved, the verlay system runs a simulation on them to kind of get that little bit of jitter effect. And that's just built right in. We don't have to code that, or we don't have to like get values from other frames or anything like that, which is awesome. I have another controller for my head here. It's actually this one right here, and basically this is going to make sure that my head stays still. I am going to add back my looks, my rotation data from the head from my animation graph, and that way I can use live link face. When I move my head, I'll be able to move the face back and forth, which will be very nice. And man, so the meat and potatoes of this whole thing is this full body IK system, and this thing is a beast. So there's a lot of different IK systems that come with this thing. Before my stream stalled out yesterday, after the stream stalled out, I was messing around to see which one could actually give me results I could quickly initiate. So the full body IK is well documented, and if you go to the Unreal Engine 5 documentation, you can actually see how it works. So if I get in here and I start playing around with these guys, you see that, it's doing all these calculations for me. However, when I first installed this, and then maybe it would be easy to just show you, when I first installed this thing, it was wild and unruly. This would be my backup. So if I just start deleting some of these bone settings here, a lot of the magic happens here in the bone settings. Actually, a clear array, and you'll see what I'm talking about. First, wow, what happened? We have a lot of stuff going on here. So I'm moving these guys, moving my controllers, but it's solving for the controllers in the weirdest way. And remember, this is full body IK, so it's rotating my character and doing all of this stuff, and that I don't necessarily want it to do, right? So here, if I move this effector too close, you notice that that's not a way a human elbow moves. So I have that set up, and then I have, if I revert to, well, I'm going to see if I can just Control Z my way back into my own good favor. And yes, I can. Nice. So basically, when you go inside these things, you can change the stiffness. So if you don't want something to rotate, up the stiffness. 1 is locked, and 0 is loose, basically. You can also max out. These are rotation values. You can max out your rotation. You can limit them, lock them, or let them be free. Certain bones I have certain limitations on. Like I believe I have the upper arm, the lower arm in... Maybe I decided not to in the end after all. I had some luck locking certain arms. I thought they were helpful. Sometimes it stopped me from being able to get my hand bone straight to wherever the placement was. And all I can say is, depending on your rig, depending on your character model, depending on your skeleton, you're going to have to spend a lot of time with this thing. Some stuff I still don't get about it. Like, I don't get why it hunched my shoulders up. If you look at my character model, the clavicles are not that high. It's really quite ridiculous. So I have this full body IK. I did battle with it. I won, and then came, all right, the question of like, how am I going to make these fingers work? And am I going to do this in Control Rig? And in the end, I think that was probably a good call. I probably could have done this part in Animation Graph or Control Rig. We're dropping frames. Ooh. All right. Let me break this down simply. So you can see I have this long set of controls here, which they look like a Guitar Hero player system, and they probably don't need to. One bit of feedback I would really love for the devs for Unreal is that you can set these great controls, which, as you can see, I'm sliding it on a given axis with limiters, and that's setting a float value. So I have a physical float value that I can change, which is awesome. I can change with it, and I can change it with code, which is great. I used this to prototype my fingers. So I set this up. It doesn't look great. It's here for my dev purposes, and I think I might be able to show it briefly if I hook it back up the way I want it to. And I do one side at a time, and then I make my duplications for symmetry afterwards, so I never made one on the other side. And I'm not hedging that. Like, it's a good call. Like, you can spend so much time just building stuff in Control Rig. You don't want to just end up like, you don't want to build something forever just for your prototype, especially if it's something you're going to replace with code later and you're not going to want the visual interface anyways. So don't lose your head is my biggest advice for Control Rig in the couple of days I've been playing around with this. So without further ado, let's talk about these fingers. So the way I worked this out is basically the and I suppose I didn't finish a thought about something here. I'm recalling that this there's a length to this. So my feedback for the devs basically was that I'd love to be able to change the length of this thing, and maybe I can do it with the scale here. It's not super obvious, but I'd love to be able to set the scale without having it be attached to what the floats are. So I have an axis and I have limits. So negative 16 to negative 180. That's what's going on in physical space, is negative 16 to negative 180. I don't need this to turn into its own bowling alley. I need those values, but I don't need it to do that. I could use a remap node, like this guy here, and I could change it, but that's just kind of frustrating. Like, using a smaller one and then getting it to the right size and then remapping every single time. So it'd be cool if there was some changes there. I'm Small Potatoes. Oh, we got somebody in the chat. Oh, we got Adler Lafleur. Hey, thanks for saying that, man. Wasn't looking at the chat. I've been so deeply engrossed in this. Engrossed, also the word gross being in there, because this is not an organized chain. So basically, I have float values that are coming in from our animation blueprint here. Like I said, everything goes into Control Rig and is given these values. These are the values coming off my VR controllers. They're coming off my index controllers. They're coming in, and then they're changing the Control Rig. So the way I have this set up is that they are being remapped to the size of the control floats that I was using here. I was using this negative 16 to negative 180 for a very specific reason. I was using those values specifically and dividing them, not quite dividing them by 3, but kind of messing around with the values as it suits me. But I'm mapping onto this with a strategic. All right, Woody, uncomplicate this. Bring it back. So basically, you've got fingers, right? Here's my fingers. Like, if I'm pointing in a direction and I curl them, they're pointing in a different direction. So how many degrees is this? From here to here, from the tip of my finger, is 180 degrees. So I'm fractioning off that bit of 180. That negative 16 comes from just me kind of just finding the right values and messing around with the numbers. I don't want to get too far into this because this is just heady, silly stuff. So I have these values coming in through the graph. They're getting mapped, and then they're being divided, and they go to the 3 finger bones on each hand. So the 3 finger bones are each getting driven by all the math that happens here, and basically it's just dividing a rotator and then using it to apply rotation to each specific finger. And that happens for each bone for each hand, the exception being the thumb, which is kind of a weird one. My thumbs that I modeled kind of not in a great place for weight painting, so they're not awesome. But the way I have this one set up is I have a sequence of interpolations, and if interpolation is a new word for you, and that's something you're not familiar with, just think of this as like an opacity fade between 2 layers in Photoshop. That's the easiest way to think about it. So this 0 to 1 is like 0 to 100% Photoshop opacity. So I'm fading between 2 different presets for my thumbs here. And I'm just going to show you this one because this is the one that was the most successful, and I came time to duplicate it. I had a little bit of trouble actually. So my right side thumbs here. So I shift between the 2 of these, and then I keep moving forward. Yeah. So switching between A and B, these have all been preset at both different points, and that's how that works. So for the most part, it's just magical. It just kind of works. The fingers actually were a lot easier to use than the IK system. I know it seems like a lot of code over here, but it was way easier than doing the IKs. All right, I gotta not let ADD get the best of me. So that's it, basically. Control rig does its thing. It's really cool. I really like it a lot. There's a lot to like. There's some stuff I still don't like. Some stuff is super unintuitive. This full body IK system is super powerful, yet it is very difficult to see what you are doing. And I suppose that some more controls probably help with that, but you have to figure out how much time do I have to mess with the controls. If you're considering also, if you're going between UE4 and UE5 and what do you want to set up right now, UE5 still being that early access, maybe stick with UE4s, because I've done control rig in both, and I have had weird glitches with this stuff. Like I found that the like offset transform and initial Euler transform, that these 2 end up kind of misbehaving tremendously in terms of the commands built into Unreal that would let you like set initial transform. A lot of times that'll go straight to the offset. A lot of times you'll copy and paste a value, and that value will go straight to the current Euler transform or the temporary transform, and then it just disappears. If you know control rig, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, suffice to say, there be glitches. So that's most of what I've been doing in here. When it all runs live, you don't have to see all these bars and stuff showing up, which is great. Let's talk about this anim BP, because kind of what's going to happen over time is my anim BP is just going to kind of be the housing unit for my control rig, and I'll do my face stuff in anim BP, and I'll do more and more of my actual character motion in control rig. Currently, one thing I'm having trouble figuring out is doing FKs like before or after the jump to IK, and I'll probably wake up tomorrow and just figure out exactly what I did wrong, but currently I'm having trouble finding a system that is as easy to use as the add to existing rotation mode in the modify bones. So I'm still using these. It's not a best practice, but I'm still using these to modify my hands. And let me compile this. Yeah. And once again, we can, if we have the game running, we're not going to be able to see our hands. They're going to be like pointed to 0, 0. But because we have everything set up to be able to display in Control Rig and Animation Blueprint, I can kind of show you what I'm talking about here. I have these custom transformations on my hands because the rotation that's coming off of the valve index controllers is not the same as the hand rotations, which is frustrating. So I have these here just kind of modifying things, but then they're actually doing the VR rotation. This is our right hand rotation. This is actually coming from our VR controllers. So these are doing modifications, and then everything is just adding to the rotation of the hands. That's mostly it. I think that, yes. Okay, so the shoulder thing. I'm gonna have to try and go back in there and do this with my FK train, but I think I tried that today and it didn't go so well. What I've got here is just more modify bones, and I'm just using them to control the nature of the way the FK chain messed up my clavicles, and I'm doing that both to the transforms on the clavicles, but then also on the arms. And honestly, I think I could shrink this a little bit more. I'm trying to figure it out because like right now my character's shoulders just look too tight, and they just like, he looks like he's ready to pounce on somebody, you know. I don't like that, and hopefully I can fix that. Might need to just have like some more rotation settings here. I'm very tempted to mess with it right now, but I won't. Yeah, so let's make sure we have everything hooked up here. Yes, we do. All right, so when I'm here, you know, I'll make sure to, when I'm recording, to get my stuff in early, and then here I have an autofocus button that will set my focus properly. I'm still working on building this set a little bit here. I've got my modes here. You can see this insane string of data under this current mode, and basically I'll make that go away. But then, you know, here's me, and now it looks wrong, right? It's like it doesn't look like it's in relation to what I have here. So I have some like built-in functionality here. When I press the A button here on my left index controller, when I press that, what it does is take stock of where the combined location of both hands are in comparison to a spot on the map. In this case, like underneath my character's butt. And then it recalibrates based on where I'm at. So if I scoot back here, and then like now it's like I'll have my arms way out, but they're only like a little bit out here, I can move back into this T-pose, and then I can reset. So that's pretty nice. And this also triggers my ridiculous self-imposed, my ill-advised calibrator that I mentioned. So this is what we got going on right now, and I think it's pretty cool. I'll get some head rotations back in here and stuff, but you can see it's pretty cool. It's pretty good. It's we got hands, you know, they work. I think I might try and create some like spring interp node to make these a little bit less fast, and they look like French fries. So I might have to work on the French fry nature of it all. That would be my notes to me if I was a studio head. I'd be like, why does his fingers look like French fries? And I'd be like, yes, you're right. We'll get to that. So that's the stream for tonight. Just thought I'd do a quick one to kind of explain how this has been going and how I got it to work. If you're really techie, maybe this was really helpful for you. If not, maybe this was just like a good exposure. I'll try to make some content in the future that is like a little bit more accessible for people who are trying to do this kind of work. So thanks for hanging out, and good to see you all.